This is Inspiring Design, where unique innovators come together to share their knowledge, share their insight, and keep us up to date with the latest industry trends. And here's your host, Rashan Senanaik.
What's up, listeners? I'm your host, Rashan. Welcome to a brand new episode and the continuation of Season 2 of Inspiring Design. This season's all about the student's point of view, and today is no exception to that. We are design thinking our way through the education and design industry, featuring students from all over Australia and various subject areas, disciplines, and stages in their education careers. So to kick things off today, I have here a very special guest, Natasha Clough. Tash is 23, local girl from the town of Wollongong. She's a final year interior design student at QUT, also studying architecture. But what makes her stand out is the fact that she has traveled to an amazing 34 countries in her life so far. Something that a lot of us actually dreams about, but she's actually achieved it at the age of 23. So today is all about traveling and design and education. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Tash.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Can we start off with a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, so 23 years old. I grew up in Mackay, Queensland. My dad is an engineer, coal mining, and so basically through his work, I have been able to travel a lot around Australia with my family, and as well as around the world, luckily. And grew up in Mackay, moved down to Brisbane for uni, and here I am.
There you go. So you're actually working at the moment?
I am working, yep. I'm working at a firm called Peddle & Potter. It's
Awesome.
kind of a new firm, just 4 of us, interior design.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I've been there for 4 weeks now, so.
There you go. Cool. 34 countries.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So, well, my first country I had ever, visited was Ghana in Africa.
That's a unique first country.
Yeah, so like I just said, my dad's an engineer. We travel a lot through his work, and basically to make ends meet, when I was born and my older brother, he decided to go shovel coal onto a conveyor belt in Africa. So I was there till the age of 3.5, and basically my first years of living there. And so that from there we just kind of came back to Australia, and then when I was 12, then Dad decided that we're going to start going on family holidays, because he worked away a lot and thought this was a good way to kind of connect with the family all together. So then went back to Africa, to South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe and Zambia. And then from there it was every second year. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And what was the last country you visited?
Last country was about 5 weeks ago. I was in Croatia.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the mindset of how that has changed you and evolved you as a person. But just to give some background, what made you choose architecture and interior to study at uni?
So initially I was doing a creative industry degree, did 6 months of that, absolutely hated it.
Love the honesty.
Yeah, absolutely hated it, yeah. Basically, in my first lecture, they said, okay, so this is the path you're heading down. It was like entertainment management. You're probably not going to get a job. And I was like, well...
This is in high school?
This was the first year out of high school.
Right.
So I was like, this is really deflating. So I took a year off to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And in that year, I went through Southeast Asia and to Japan as well, on 2 separate occasions.
Yep.
And design was something I was always kind of not really knowing that I was actually interested in. There was some points where I thought that maybe I wanted to be an architect, but my OP wasn't high enough. I thought that was really kind of out of reach for me. But when I was younger, my favourite thing to do on the weekends was to go visit open houses with my mum. So that's always what I wanted to do. So when I went to Japan, I started going to all the temples and seeing how they, everything's really like the whole urban landscape's crazy there, and how contrasting is to the new compared to the old, and how they've kept tradition, but they're also really technically advanced. And I just really started loving it. So my OP wasn't high enough to get into architecture, so I went into interior, thinking that maybe I wanted to change into architecture after the first year, but I decided I really loved interior, and that was the way I wanted to head.
Awesome. So your ultimate goal is to become an interior designer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I know there's a lot of stigma around interior design, around the word and what the career is, and a lot of people don't understand what it actually is. It gets confused for decorating a lot.
Yeah, we actually had a bit of a throwback when I spoke with Emma Ridings from Buck, and she actually mentioned the exact same thing. She's a principal, but there's still that misunderstanding in the general public about interior design being thought as interior decorating. It's very different.
Yeah, extremely different. And I still tell people, when I still meet people and say, I'm almost graduating with interior design, a degree in interior design, they're like, oh, that's a 4-year degree. Oh, I'm really good at interior design. You can come redo my bedroom or something.
Oh, no.
Oh dear. Like I haven't studied 4 years to be asked to like redecorate your bedroom. But that's a whole different topic. But yeah, so I decided I wanted to go into architecture afterwards, even just get my bachelor, because it's my second major at the moment, and it does just open up a lot more career opportunities, a little bit less stigma around the label architect, and
True. And if you had to choose the complementing skills, what was the thought process you went through to pick architecture? Was that actually done on by yourself, or was there other people helping you make that decision?
So I initially picked it as my second major. Just I thought it would be good to complement interior. And then I went overseas on an exchange, and from that point, that exchange was in Oxford in the UK.
Brilliant.
And the architecture there is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And from that point, I thought, oh, okay, this is what I want to study as well. I want to learn more about this part of it as well.
Fair enough. Let's get on to exchange programs. And obviously you went to Oxford Uni, and was it Oxford University?
No, it was not Oxford Uni.
Okay.
It was Oxford Brookes. So that's the uni next to Oxford Uni.
Okay.
But I always tell people I went to Oxford School of Architecture because actually Oxford Uni doesn't have architecture.
Wow, there you go.
So I can still say I went to Oxford School of Architecture.
And how long was that for?
That was for 6 months.
6 months?
Yeah. It was a really good uni. I think it's the 4th or the 5th best in the UK. And one of the only ones that does interior. So really good uni. Really
I feel like I know the answer to this question, but obviously, would you recommend going on exchange for students?
Absolutely. I think with interior, you have a very small window from when you can go to get your subjects equated with subjects back at QT. I think the program's really amazing. There definitely, for interior students, needs to be more options though. But for architecture and business, I met so many different people over there, and they loved it as well. And because there was only just one option, one or two options for interior, the university I went to was really, really intense. And so it wasn't really for me like mucking around, traveling every weekend and doing that kind of stuff. It was a lot of the same here at home, like late nights, all-nighters. And I think it's an amazing experience, but I always tell people, I've talked to a lot of second years and third years about it when they have tried to apply, and I just said, just be really aware that it's not like...
It's not a fantasy.
It's not a fantasy. It's a lot of hard work. That one uni, I know other people, the business kids there had a great time. They had a bit more spare time than design students.
No, that's fair enough. And for students that are interested, like even I get inquiries, and I've actually never gone on exchange. To me, having moved to Australia, I feel like I was in exchange for the rest of my life. So it's a bit of a different mindset. Yeah. But how do you get that process started?
Yeah, so it was a year-long process. Before I left, I worked 3 jobs to try save up the money. You can get a bursary from the uni, and you can get a loan from a HECS debt, which is around $6,000.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. But you have to apply like 8 months, 10 months before you actually go.
Right.
So that whole process, for some people it was just like a day figuring out what they wanted to do, but for the interior students, because there's not a lot of options and trying to get your subjects approved for what's weighted and things, it was a really, really tedious process, and it took me about 2 to 3 months to actually get all of that sorted, because you'd finally find a subject and then you'd email and say, hey, does this subject work? And they'd email back and say, no, it doesn't, find a different one.
Right.
And even I was still getting my final subject approved while I was actually over there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, so it's a really tedious process for interior students anyway. But after you apply, which I think is, I went from January to July.
Yeah.
So we had to have our application in the June beforehand, and then basically you just had to wait to see if you got approved, and I got approved 3 weeks before I booked my flights.
Wow.
So
that would have been stressful.
Yeah, it was really stressful. It was like 2 days before Christmas, and like I was leaving on the 1st of January, and it was stressful. But got approved, got over there, got all my subjects approved. Yeah, great experience. And
awesome.
Yeah, I would definitely give advice to people who want to go on exchange is to just find someone else from design who's gone on exchange and just get all the information out of them and get what subjects they've done, and so it cuts down the process a lot quicker. Yeah. I
have a feeling after this recording you may actually be getting these messages go to a person.
Yeah.
Having even I feel like I should consult you with which countries to travel.
Yeah.
It's actually an amazing feat.
Yeah, I'm always here, happy to help.
Now, obviously everyone always says, workplaces also look at traveling as an added bonus when they're looking through your application and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, you just started a job recently.
Yeah.
How did that conversation go? Did it actually, your travel experience, did that come into play?
I think it came up in the interview. I actually worked at Cotty Parker Architects before this.
Okay.
And that played a big part in my interview there, because they were really interested in that. And they were also really interested that I was studying architecture as well as an interior design student.
Do you think it gave you the edge?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, I think it's, people see the word Oxford and they're like, wow.
True.
Yeah. It definitely gave me the edge. It's, I think people don't look at your GPAs at all for design. They look through your portfolio, they look through what skills you have, and then they look at your experience. And so if someone has no experience and I have no experience, but I've also gone on exchange, a lot of the time I feel like that's going to take you over the edge. And
definitely. And that's actually valuable advice for, I think, students going through this, looking at the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And having learned design in another country as well, comparing to Australia, what was that like?
It was insane. It was so different. So I had a really passionate Italian interior designer.
Wow.
But they didn't call it interior design over there. They called it interior architecture.
Right.
So there's a little bit less stigma over there about the actual career, and they did a lot of architecture as well. So basically my assignment included the carcass of the building, but you didn't really have to go into the structure of it. It was just, didn't go too much into design.
Right.
They gave a basic what they wanted, and then you designed around that. And my assignment was a semester-long assignment designing a pod for a homeless man. So our teacher designed the landscape of it and where it was going to be, and gave us a carcass, and basically each student designed pods, and then we all made models of it and put it together in this kind of landscape and presented it to an actual client. Every year they changed.
A real world client?
Yeah, so it was called I can't remember now. Crisis. It was called Crisis. So Oxford's got the highest homeless rate in the whole of the UK.
Right.
And Crisis is a website and basically offers like artworks and art classes, education, free education, soup kitchen for the homeless in Oxford, and they have interviews on their website about all the homeless around the UK. And we went onto the website, found a real client, and because they had these big blurbs about them, had to do full studies into who they were, and then we designed specifically for that homeless person. So it was really interesting, and then also really interesting. Changing the whole entire perception of, I always try to include passive design in my designs in Australia about getting wind flow and as much sunlight and not too harsh sun, but they're completely opposite. It's all about retaining heat, and I went with another girl and we're like, we have no idea how to do this. There was a lot of going back to the tutor, like, is this right? Like, is this how you keep the heat in? Like, I don't really understand. Like, do we open the windows? Do we not? Like, it was really different. The whole entire, I guess, like, it was flipped on its head what we were used to, but yeah, really interesting, and crazy intense. You think you have a whole semester to do the research and come up with the design in the end, but the tutor just kept throwing curveballs at you, and it was 2 6-hour days or 2 7-hour days at uni
per week.
Yeah, per week. And I think one weekend, it was one of my friend's birthdays, so we decided to go to Berlin for the weekend. We're like, okay, stuff it, we're going to go. And then we came back, we're like, why did we go? We're so behind. And but it's really good because you can, on exchange, you just have to pass or fail. It doesn't come back to your grades in Australia. But I went there with the perception of, I want to learn as much as I can. I want to learn how to 3D print. I want to learn how to use the laser cutter machine, because we don't really do that too much in interior, about making models and things. So, and the tutor there was really helpful into just pushing you, and
Awesome.
Really.
And was the delivery, the way it's taught at uni level, was that different? Did you see any differences there?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, so there was only 20 people in my class, 23 I think, whereas in interior we've got 60 here. So there was it's way smaller, way more class time, so you could get like 15 minutes to half an hour in groups with your tutor, whereas here we have a timer for like 7 minutes every time. So you get a lot more feedback, a lot more content, and then you finish off with a lot more of a resolved design. And you make 4 or 5 there was one point where I was making a new model every week. It was really model based. And here with interior we start off with like sketches and a concept, and then we put it into like floor plans and sections, and then maybe if we have time we make a model at the end. Right. Completely opposite over there. They start off with a model, and then they rip things out and put it in, make this really messy model, and then they make a refined model out of that, and from that they take their sections and elevations, and then they do their renders last. So completely opposite. Yeah. And I was terrible at model making because we don't have to do that in
I'm
interior.
personally not a fan of model making as well. So that would have been an experience.
Yeah, definitely an experience. Definitely a complete different way of teaching. Yeah.
Wow, there you go. And do you think that is actually a beneficial way of learning as a student?
I think it's beneficial to have both. Okay. I think what I've learned from my 4 years here is that it's really difficult. Design is so subjective, but I think every tutor prefers either hand drawing or digital or model making, and it's really good to have a wide set of skills, but also tutors and who's marking you need to be aware that not everyone has the same set of skills. So it's really difficult when you hand in I'm really good at digital stuff, I'm not that good at hand drawing. But if your tutor prefers hand drawing, sometimes it's a bit hard to kind of navigate where you stand on that scale. Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's the biggest problem. Most educators usually teach through their bias, their lens, and we actually need to have that I think foresight to understand that teachers are actually, your students are actually going to be ending in the industry. They need all those skill sets. So you need to allow them to find their own creativity. Yeah. It's something that I always tell my students whenever they come and ask me going, oh, do you think this looks good? I'm like, that part is irrelevant. Like if I may think it looks good, I may not, but does it make it a bad design? It may or may not. Yeah. It's up to you to understand that as a designer.
Absolutely.
So it's, that's actually quite interesting. And Are there lectures? Is it open studios there? How does it work over there?
For my class, my tutorials, it was just open studios. I think we had maybe 2 or 3 lectures, really informal. He just stood up in the front of class, had his laptop turned around, and was like, he went to a trip to Japan one time, and one of his lectures was showing his slides.
So show and tell.
Yeah, show and tell, basically.
Yeah.
He was really passionate, got really excited about the small things, and one of those tutors that would like start off with a conversation just talking normally, and by the end he was shouting with his arms waving everywhere. Like, he was very passionate. And so it was really just informal, but a lot more one-on-one time and a lot more catered to what your design is. And like everyone by the end of it had a vast variety of different designs. Like mine was really organic and layered and timber, where my friend, and like sort of shaped like a big piece of coral, where my friend who came with me and who we basically had the same amount of time with him, she ended up with this big perforated steel structure, and completely same brief but completely different things and completely contrasting, where I don't feel like that happens as much here. I feel like because we have less time and we're really focused, I feel like we're really focused on what's on trend at the moment a little bit. Well, not really focused, but I feel like that comes into it a lot. So this last semester, we handed in our design assignment and everything was Carlisle, Rich and Spence, archways and that kind of thing. Whereas I feel like on exchange, everything was just so vastly different from each other. And so just, I don't know, it's just something that happens in between the, I guess, one-on-one connection that kind of pushes you in different ways. And
what about the software, the technology that you guys used over there? Is it similar to here?
So they used Rhino. I think I'm really Revit based, and I've kind of got myself really ingrained in Revit. At Coddy Park, they used ArchiCAD, and I had to teach myself.
That would have been a culture shock.
It was difficult, but over there they used AutoCAD and Rhino, and I thought, because they were so model based, they didn't really get too much into the technical side of things, just really basic.
Conceptual.
Conceptual, which I think QT does really good here. They really go into the documentation and how things work. So it's hit and misses from both sides, I feel. The way they did their technology and how they were taught it, I thought they were missing out a bit compared to what we learn. But they focus so much more on the conceptual side of things. So I don't know if there's a balance there somewhere, or if they focus more on conceptual and we focus more on the technical. I'm not too sure, but just two different.
No, it's actually quite interesting to know that, because something I get asked from teachers a lot is, what if our students they want to go beyond and learn and practice outside of Australia? What are the softwares they need to use? And obviously, if it's an Archi-based one, it's quite, you have only one or two options. But then if you're talking industrial, interior, landscape, any of the different ones, it starts to broaden it. And it's almost like, where do you put the lid on it?
Absolutely.
But it's interesting to see that even at Oxford, they had that same limitations. And so I want to actually take a bit of a tangent now and talk about, if you were to travel, if you say there's two versions of you, parallel universes.
Okay.
One version is the one that has traveled 34 different countries. The other version stayed in Australia, never traveled outside of Australia. What would be the differences in those two people, do you think?
Man, I think that's like a very deep question. My whole entire life has been based around learning from other cultures, and not just about design, but about other cultures, and making sure that I am aware and politically correct. And I'm currently dating a person at the moment whose parents are from Sri Lanka. He's Australian.
Oh, wow.
But it's been really kind of challenging I feel like if I haven't had this travel experience before, it would be so much harder to understand where he's coming from being a brown person in Australia than me trying to understand now. I feel like I would be a very naive person if I hadn't travelled and my parents hadn't raised me the way they raised me. I think that's a really deep question. I could go on tangent about that for hours, but I really like the person I am at the moment and the person I've become because of the travel, and I feel like it's opened up my eyes a lot to the world and how I perceive Australia, how I perceive friendship groups and different minority groups, and how I've gone to a lot of third world countries, so know where I can have gratitude in my life, where I don't, and I think if I didn't travel, I would just be naive to the world, which I feel like not a lot of people are, but it's just not people are naive, but a lot of people are just unaware of different cultures and how contrasting they actually are.
Yeah, that's right. And I think this is something that the UN is actually trying to help tackle in the education sector, where they went through this series of production submissions where in VR 360 video, they recorded classrooms from around the world. So African schools that, have no desks to private schools in the US to everything, right? Yeah. And it's actually very interesting because it's to allow that same awareness that you're talking about so that people understand, what happens in their country isn't the norm around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that they should be, whether they're working towards something better or bringing people together or that gratitude that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, empathy is a very big tool for a designer. And it's one of the main values of design thinking as well. Do you think your empathetical skills have grown because of your travels?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I've seen a lot of poverty in the world, and I think that was one of the key things. Like I saw my first dead body when I was 13 in India. I have seen a lot of poverty, and I've seen how design can actually change it. And I think it's something that's been in the back of my head when I've traveled to places. A lot of the time it's aesthetics. People see aesthetics, but actually going to a country and seeing how a space can make you feel and how it can change someone's life, that is what's pushed me to be an interior designer. Because a lot of it, so much is focused around that, and it's so user focused, and it's so much more about just the aesthetics of it, and spatial justice, salutogenics, environment, all of that comes into play.
And it comes from the care for that end user.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you can't just design something pretty and expect it to work. Like, we've done huge studies into, workplace and what should be going into a workplace to make someone feel more productive, to make someone feel more comfortable. And a lot of people are trying to implement the theory of home into a workplace. But then it can go too far and it can't go far enough, and then you actually go to the workplace and you're in a dark room and you just you feel it, you understand, and you understand where people are coming from, and you feel like a workplace, I'm not going to mention the name, but I worked at was black walls.
Wow.
And no windows, and no one stayed after work and socialised with each other. Everyone just went straight home straight away. Everyone just worked straight through the day. It was just really deflating. You'd walk in and it'd be so sunny outside, and you'd walk into this just black box. Yeah. And
it's a prison cell.
Pardon?
Prison cell.
It wasn't prison cell, it's just suave.
Wow.
But I just don't think suave works in a workplace. So it's that's just one example, and that's just your workplace and people's homes and jail cells and education centres. It can just go so much further. The recent one that we did last semester was my group came up with the concept of reinventing youth detention centres, because they're not working at the moment. And we gained a lot of inspiration from Scandinavian youth detention centres and how they design around that. And it can be so much more about integrating education rather than just detaining someone. Yeah. And because the reoffending rate's 80% for youth detention boys. And it's like, well, we're obviously doing something wrong.
Yeah.
How can you reinvent that? And design is such a huge part of that. And yeah, I feel like that's why I'm here. That's why I want to do it. Yeah.
I feel like I can see that your care for the actual industry, the end user, has grown just based on your, I think, life experiences and that travel. And this is actually really interesting because there's Scandinavian schools that have removed the word detention. And when you're, quote unquote, a bad kid and you do something naughty, you're not sent to detention anymore. You're actually sent to meditation classes.
Oh, amazing.
And it's had a huge impact on how those kids actually work and their behavior changes.
Yeah.
And it's not a negative connotation anymore. They're not being punished for something.
Yeah.
They start to see it as a reward. And there's teachers that I've spoken to about that here. And especially people in like the more difficult areas, the low socioeconomic, where they have a lot of gang issues and things like that. If 19 out of the 25 kids are, saying the F word to the teacher, it's a very tough job for the actual teacher itself. But then other than sending them to detention, they don't have another solution. Yeah. We spoke about this and changing that to meditation and how that can impact. I think, again, it's that what you said before, they've been living in that societal bubble. They weren't aware of it. And now it's actually given them a different motivation to look at that same problem in a completely different angle. And I think that's the beauty of design as well. We inherently learn how to look at the same issue from multiple different angles. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Now, I think one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, has traveling made you a better designer? Like, obviously, I know that the question, we've already answered this, but I wanted to understand your point of view. Do you think it's made you a better designer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just the education point of view in Oxford was 100% made me a better designer just because of skill set there and just having a totally different view from a different angle. I think doing architecture classes or taking architecture classes have made me a better designer because architects take a completely different view from what interiors take. So, which I've actually really struggled with. I've done first year architecture subjects as a third year interior student. I'm like, what am I doing? But yes, because it's just a completely different mind frame. But then traveling in itself is, I guess, in Australia we see, I guess, our cities, and there's the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and there's buildings in Melbourne and things. But you go overseas and you see Sagrada Familia, or you see the Eiffel Tower, or you go to Porto in Portugal, and they've got these massive bridges. I've never been interested in bridges in my life, and then I went to Porto and I was like, I love bridges. Like, they're just massive, and it's just insane how, like, the engineering behind it. And I think traveling and actually seeing the extent of where architecture can go, you can't see that too much in Australia. Maybe here and there, but like in Europe, it's just crazy. Everywhere you see such small details and such big details and huge designs and old things that are hundreds of years old. And I went to the Colosseum and I was like, oh, like, it's just surreal. Like, it was really odd. Like, I was walking to go find it and I was like, okay, it's on my maps, it's coming up soon. I was like, oh, I want, like, if I have to turn this corner, where's it going to be? And then I just like turned to my left and it was there. And I was like, oh, that's the Colosseum. Like, I've seen this in movies my whole life and now it's there in front of me. And yeah, it's really surreal, and how beautiful and detailed and it is. And I just went back to Italy over this last mid-semester break, and I went and saw an opera in like an old Roman arena, and it was insane. It was insane. It was so beautiful. And yeah, you don't get that in Australia. You don't get the old architecture. You don't get contrasting with like vastly contemporary architecture. You don't have you'd have like a little bit of modernism here and there. I went to the Barcelona Pavilion and it was so much smaller than what I thought it was.
I see.
And then it was so much more beautiful than I thought it was as well. It's crazy. And yeah, just really amazing. Definitely made me a better designer.
I think that's the beauty of it. It's actually it's given you a whole array of new design styles and features. It's almost like having your own personal experience Pinterest board.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And at the same time, making you a more sympathetic, understanding, compassion, empathy. You can't go wrong.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it's I think it's also sad as well, though you go to Europe and you see these massive churches and you're like, that church could have saved a whole African country, you know, that kind of thing. Like, it's a bit sad in that aspect that the amount of money that has gone into the decor, I guess, of some of these places. But it's also just really, pretty amazing to go and experience it. And I think with the Notre Dame burning, and a lot of people are saying, why don't you donate this money to the Great Barrier Reef? And, you know, you could be donating, the Notre Dame got this many billions of dollars, but you could be donating this money to somewhere else. I think people don't realise the importance of architecture and history. So when people are donating money to get the Notre Dame fixed, I'm like, do it, because you need to conserve that history and that architecture. And of course you need to be putting money into the Great Barrier Reef as well, but I think people don't actually realise the importance of spaces and the buildings, and we spend 80% of our lives average inside. There is a huge importance of what that is feeling like and what that makes you feel like. And yeah,
definitely. I think that's beautifully said. And obviously a lot of students and even actually adults have this problem of you can't travel unless you save, you need money to travel. You've obviously found a way around that.
Yeah.
And one of the last things I wanted to ask was, what are your tips in making that happen?
Yeah, so I've come from a very privileged household where it's been a huge thing for my family to educate me in this way. And so that's been great for me. It's given me the taste of travel. Getting to Oxford, I was living out of home. I worked 3 jobs. I saved a lot of money. But I always had my parents to fall back on if I couldn't make it, which is a privilege I have that a lot of people don't have. So I'm just making that clear. But basically planning a budget as well is really important. Get onto Centrelink. If you can still get Centrelink while you're overseas if you're studying, and not if you're traveling, but if you're studying you can. So thank you, Centrelink. I probably wouldn't be able to do it without you.
There you go.
It's a lot of I think to get to Oxford, I didn't really have a work-social life balance. I just worked and worked because that was a big goal.
I think you remember mentioning that you were working for 3 jobs leading up to that, so that's incredible commitment. Yeah, a big commitment.
I didn't do that the whole year. I just did it to a point where I knew I could get myself over there. I knew to a point that I could still save money and get myself over there by the end of the year. So I think I did it for maybe 6 months. Or 8 months. I worked 3 jobs. But I also lived out of home as well, and I chose to do that. I could have worked 2 jobs or 1 job and moved back in with my parents as well. So it's just a balance and finding what you're passionate about and finding how you can get there. It's when I was over there, I chose the cheapest places to stay, like dodgy hostels and things. So I was very budget driven, and I'm okay to do that. And I know a lot of people aren't okay to travel by themselves, and a lot of people need friends and things. So I think it's really personal preference. It's don't try plan it like a month beforehand. You need to plan, like you need like a year to plan something if you're going over 6 months or so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, there you go. Thanks so much, Tash. And how can people get in touch with you? Because you are a wealth of experience and knowledge when it comes to this. So how can people get in touch with you if they have questions for you?
They can add me on Facebook. Okay. My name's in the
show notes.
Welcome to add me on Facebook. Always happy to answer questions about exchange and travel and things. It's a big passion of mine, so always try to urge people to do it as much as they can. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thank you so much, Tash. And before we leave, jump online and leave a review if you like what we do here. at the end of every episode, I'm going to give a shout out to the reviews, and your name can be listened to over 14 different countries. And also jump online and check out the past episodes if you have any passion, see if the topics are there. If not, you can actually message me, and I make it a point to actually personally respond to every single message that I receive. So till next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.